Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Cyber Thursday. Today, our webinar is about a day in the life of a forensic investigator. My name is Paula McCain. I'm one of the senior business advisors here in North Central Texas Small Business Development Center. I don't know if you all realize, but today is National Sour Candy Day and National Caviar Day. I'm not sure why those two are together. They really don't seem to go together, but whatever. The SBDC is a leading provider of assistance for small businesses. We are grant funded, and because of that, we can provide all of our services to you at no cost. A quick reminder, we will be recording this webinar, then adding it to our YouTube channel. Today's webinar will be interactive, so please feel free to raise your hand. That's a small button at the bottom. If you have a question or comment, you can also use the chat feature. I'll be watching that and paying attention to it, so we will get to your questions as quickly as possible. Our presenter today is Andy Singleton. He is co-owner and principal consultant with CyberTend. He is a very skilled cyber investigator. He is adept at forensically collecting, investigating, and presenting findings discovered through all types of sources such as mobile devices, computers, social media, and email systems. Welcome, Andy.
Thank you, Paula. Thanks. And let's see, I can drag the little thingy. Do you want me to put my presentation up, I guess? And
there you go.
There we go. And let me see, I'm going to share. There we go, screen one, share. Okay, thank you, Paula. So yeah, Dan Laughter, Digital Forensic Investigator. I put these funny graphics up here because I feel like I'm the one on the little man in the red on the left coming in to soup and save the day, but a lot of times it seems like I'm scooping unicorn poop. So, but that's kind of the way it goes with this kind of a business. Again, thanks so much to the SBDC for sponsoring this. Great organization that serves the counties around here. I live in Denton County myself, and leverage services from them as well. I am a small business. There's a few of us. I was talking to them a little bit before we got on this bridge. Digital forensics investigative companies tend to be fairly small, like myself, with a handful of investigators, to very large, like the Dells of the world, like the Ernst & Youngs of the world, where they've got teams of folks. I would tell you that small business with just a handful, 4 or 5 investigators makes up the majority of our space. And the reason that is because this is a very personal business, and we'll talk about that. And the skill sets needed, you need to keep up to date, but it's a relationship. It is truly a relationship type business and a trust type business. But the SBDC has helped my company out, and be sure and reach out and talk to them as well. And thank you so much for your sponsorship. Who I am. So this is my family. It's the center of us, my beautiful wife and son and daughter. And then I kind of put this up to kind of show all the businesses and kind of just show a little bit about me. I've been around this business quite some time, Army veteran from back early on, but I've been in the telecommunications business, the large carrier space, since for my whole career. I've been doing digital forensics investigations for since 2018, when I started my own company, specifically focused on digital forensics investigation. And I got my start in this business by a relationship that I had with a very large pharmaceutical company. I was friends with the CISO there, and I, definitely feel blessed every day for knowing this individual who at the time said, Andy, we're using Ernst & Young for a lot of our investigations. They don't really give us the information we need. They're hard to work with. They give us the report, and that's the report. But that's the kind of deal you get with a large Ernst & Young type company. They're charging thousands and thousands of dollars. They don't really work with us. He asked, you have the background would you be interested in trying your hand at a couple of cases that we've got? One of them was a harassment case through with an employee that she was being harassed by somebody else through LinkedIn and other social media, and then another was intellectual property theft, and that was 2018. And I'm doing a regular clip of, I don't know, maybe 10 investigations a month, close to now, so doing pretty good business. And what we specifically do, investigation, incident response. So intellectual property theft is my main focus. And this is when a key employee, for example, your lead of sales or your vice president of product development leaves, they show up at a new company, and magically all the products that you had at your company are now part of the company they went to. That's intellectual property theft. So that's a big part of what I do. Is what'll happen is that person leaves. This company will do a discovery hold, what's called a discovery hold, for an investigation hold on this individual. They'll ship me their laptop, or internationally we do images now, what's called an image. We take a bit for bit copy of it. With them, I've worked with them, and they're a very good reference. The company is Lonza, who is my kind of cornerstone company. They are the ones that developed the Moderna vaccine. So they're the size of Pfizer and everything else. And I would tell you very proudly, I took all the business from Ernst & Young. I took all the business from Dell SecureWorks globally from those, because of the way I work with folks and the way I work with businesses. And he's a very good reference to my work. Business email compromise, ransomware. We just did a ransomware event here in Dallas this last week. Company, small business, 120 employees, 3 locations, 2 in Dallas, 1 in San Antonio, had all of their information locked up by criminals and all the data exfiltrated. So we went in and helped them recover some of that data. We helped them get their business back online and working, and helped them with kind of guiding them on things to do to protect their business in the future from this happening. Identified, source of intrusions. That one kept to come from Russia is what we kind of identified. And whether you out there know it or not, we're a pretty big target in the Western world for these kind of things. A big part of the business too is putting together information security program models. This is a comprehensive program that we've started up probably in the last 6 months. It's took off very well, because after my incident response, usually for whatever programs we're working with, the customer always wants to know. So I've established that trust relationship at that point, right? So they want to know, what can we do better? What can we do top to bottom business wise? Not just IT, but HR policies, human policies, physical security, handling of electronic data, cybersecurity, protecting the business. What can we do top to bottom to make our business more resilient and make it, where we have recourse against people that do intellectual property theft? Because I can tell you, if you don't have a privacy policy, you don't have signed documentation from the employee, a lot of those things, the courts won't even listen to you. If you try to go and say, well, Sally worked here for 20 years and she's gone to work for, XYZ competitor, and all of our data showed up there. Well, did you have an NDA with that employee? Did you have a privacy policy they knew about? Did they have cybersecurity training that they knew about? No. Well, sorry, it's not going to really hold up in court. So help get those information security program models in place. We do investigate mobile devices, Apple and Android, Windows, Mac, Linux, web server breaches, instant response. We've made some heavy investments. So this business requires quite a bit of compute power and quite a bit of software investment. Cellebrite, for example, is my mobile phone. This is the same software that's used by the feds to investigate. Guarantee Cellebrite's being used to investigate the Trump shooting right now. It is the de facto. The license for that software was $20,000. So just so you understand what we're kind of working with here in forensics, this isn't something that you would say, hey, I'll get my cousin who's good at IT to investigate for you. No, this is on a completely different level what we work. So many pieces of commercial software, Cellebrite, Belkasoft, Cape, and other things. And we always provide recommendations on findings. So that's one of the differences between me and some of the Dell SecureWorks out there and the others. We always provide information on how to strengthen your security posture. And And we always go above and beyond. That's a big deal. So what's the definition of digital forensic investigator? It's just the assistant investigator who solves crimes or other maybe civil crimes, intellectual property theft, those kind of things, fraud, and in a sound manner that is relied on facts only. So the process really is seizure of the electronic equipment, mobile phone, cloud services, website, whatever that case might be. Evidence acquisition, so taking images, forensically sound images of these equipment. So something that will hold up in court, very, very big deal for my big pharmaceutical company. They've said in court based on my investigations before where they've had to sue employees that we're doing basically cyber espionage. And they're a big target for that because of their size and because of, like I say, they made the Moderna vaccine. And there's other industries out there that are targets for these kind of cyber espionage where it was very obvious this employee came from a competitor, stole a bunch of things, worked for about a month, and went back to that competitor with a bunch of new information. So the process that I work on bringing equipment in with chain of custody, documentation, video evidence, evidence acquisition, and analysis and evidence presentation follows a very regimented process, and I deliver facts only in this documentation. There's not assumptions made. There's not, well, I think this, I think that. It's evidence-based presentation on the findings that I've made. Because as you would know, right, in the court, an investigator can't say, well, I think that this person probably did this because of that. Well, there's none of that goes on. This is facts only that are presented through this. So that's what we do in digital forensics investigation. Now, in my reports, let's say facts only, when I talk to the customer verbally, they'll kind of ask questions about what maybe I've seen in other investigations, what my thoughts are, but those don't become part of the investigation itself, the results, because that's not what a forensic investigator does. It's the facts only. So these are the big things that are part of this business. One of the biggest keys to be in this kind of business is ethics, integrity, and trust, because I'm going into companies, they're handing me mobile devices, they're handing me pieces of equipment that has all their company secrets on it, right? They trust that I won't talk about it. I have a problem getting references in this thing. Now, Lons has been great and said they'll provide a reference because I've worked with them long enough. I'd never talk about specific cases and specific people, share specific type of information with anybody under any circumstances. This is all information that is highly confidential with companies, and it's always based on integrity, ethics, and trust. And that's what this business is really about, because we are in the middle of what companies would regard as, their business practices. If this were to leak, or if for some reason the data that I have were to get out to competitors, that would be devastating to these businesses. So I'm very careful with the way I handle information. These are kind of the core skill sets for forensic investigators. Communication skills being a big one, technical skills. A lot of these technical skills are very, very focused because this is a broad area. When you talk about forensics investigations, there's from just mobile devices, people are very skilled in that. There's PCs, there's Mac, there's websites, there's industrial control systems, right, that control the water supplies and control gas and power. I'm not involved in that. That's a very unique, special skill. I've got folks that I know, if somebody were to call me from a city or from a gas company and say, hey, we need to investigate some kind of compromise or some kind of incident we've had with our pipelines, I've got folks I could recommend. That's not me. That's a very specialized skill set. So a lot of this in here is, it is a big industry, but everybody, for the most part, is very, very, very highly specialized and very, very good in a certain area. You got to have investigators' mindset. What does that mean? It means to kind of put yourself in the line of, in the eyes of a criminal or in the eyes of the person performing the act. It was like, if I was trying to get out intellectual property data, how would I do it? And so those are the kind of things you would look at. Or if I was trying to hurt this company or hurt this business, what are the things that I know based on the information I've gathered that I could do to harm them? And so you kind of got to put yourself in that kind of mindset and kind of understand those things. Very, self-motivated and desire to learn. That's a biggie. So industry certification, so expert information systems, specialization are common. Mobile phones in themselves are a whole world of their own. They don't operate like PCs. They don't have the same kind of file systems. They don't have the same type structure. So highly specialized in mobile phones is very common. And I took that leap this last year and started really getting into mobile devices as things have come up a lot more, people using them in businesses. And it takes very specialized software. That's that Celebrite I was talking about. That was about a $20,000 investment to get into, specifically mobile, where I could do what I felt like was a very good investigation for customers. Industry certification, fundamental understanding of how computers and OSs work. So really understanding fundamentally, it's just like an electrician, right? How does that light switch turn on? How does that light turn on when I turn the switch on? Well, hopefully your electrician knows how that works, right? Otherwise you wouldn't hire them, right? So the same in computers, you got to kind of know, what that machine's doing, what it means for the system to actually boot up, and how does it get that operating system loaded, and what kind of file system does it run? And the same for mobile phones, how does the operating system get on there? How does that even the screen display what it's displaying? So you got a lot of know a lot of stuff behind the curtains on these systems to really be able to understand them. It's just the same as a mechanic. The mechanic's got to understand how an engine works, right? They got to understand how that fuel combusts to make that motor go. You wouldn't want to hire a mechanic that said, oh, I think you turn the key and then somehow or another it just magically turns on and it goes. No, you want to hire somebody, you want to hire the right electrician or the right mechanic to fundamentally understand how this thing operates. It's the same with this business and forensics. You got to really understand how the thing works to get to the truth. Ability, this is a big one because I work mainly with HR and legal as my primary contacts are typical. IT is brought in typically to provide the assets, but IT is typically not involved, especially with intellectual property theft or breach of confidentiality with a company. They're not involved. They're involved so much as to get me the equipment and get me, say, decryption keys if the equipment is encrypted, because I do provide decryption services with this as part of it. My primary work is with human resources and legal. They don't speak techies, right? They don't understand if I say a bunch of technical gobbledygook. They want to know the facts, and they want to know them in plain English. Of course, attorneys, you spin that around, and I don't know half the things that attorneys are saying, but they want me to explain it simply. So I acquiesce because that's who I work with, or legal, primarily in human resources. And again, those two things are not of insignificant because we're dealing with people's lives, right? We're dealing with people's jobs. We're dealing with people's immigration status. I've had that happen before, where there was an egregious thing happened with a different company, and this guy was deported because of the report and because of the information that he took. So you got to be very careful and very understanding of what you're doing and empathetic, but at the same time you're doing facts. We're doing facts here about this is exactly what happened. This is what the employee took or they didn't take. That's part of that skilled report writing. My reports always flow executive summary first, because the lawyers and HR just want to know, what are the basic facts of this thing? What did you find? And then all of my supporting document, most of my reports are anywhere from 60 pages to, I've had them over 150 pages before. And it is a short summary, usually a page of an executive summary, a timeline of events that have taken place that are relevant to the investigation. I'll show you a couple of examples of that in a moment. And then all the supporting evidence that supports what I just stated into the executive summary, because that document can then be taken to other attorneys if needed, or law enforcement or immigration or whatever the case to prove the point of having taken recourse, if any, against somebody that's performed some kind of illegal activity against a company or business, and willingness to constantly learn. So this is without a doubt a business where you can't stop learning. I take classes constantly. I'm in the middle of my own class right now, taking some classes on deeper forensics on iPhones myself, because it's every iOS, right? The mobile, the Apple phone that we have today is not the Apple phone of 10 years ago or whenever it came out. The Android device that we have today is not the Android device of 10 years ago. PCs were the same, or Windows 11. I've had to learn a bunch of new methods with Windows 11 specifically. So it's willingness to constantly learn. Luckily, in this space, there's very good resources to help you out, and very good resources to learn. But you've got to be willing to learn. You can't get into this role and think, well, I'm just going to figure out how to do X, Y, Z, and that's going to be it. No. And that's with any industry, right? I don't care if you're a teacher or a mechanic or anything else. Nowadays, everything changes so fast, you've got to keep up with it. But forensics in particular, there's constantly new threats coming out. There's constantly new methods that the criminals can, encrypt your data, run ransomware, steal your information, steal your SIM card information, those kind of things. You've got to be able to react, or you've got to be able to understand those types of methods, and constantly learn are a biggie. Information sources, it's pretty much anything that has data that we work with. So all of those there, we do memory analysis, mobile device, cloud storage, Dropbox, iCloud, your Google, Gmail, Office 365, OneDrive, all of these things, all of these manner of information sources that we particularly do in forensics examination. Now, I would say this is why it's so specialized, right? Because one person can't be, it's hard to be, hard, it's hard to be an expert across this whole broad area. So you got experts, like I say, specifically mobile device. You got experts in Mac. You've got experts in Linux. You've got experts in cloud storage. You've also got experts in industrial control systems. Is another really big thing. Experts in car forensics, if you can imagine right now. So there's experts. That's not me. I don't have the equipment or the technology right in place to do that. But there's car forensics. All these cars nowadays have that black box. If anybody saw that crash, I guess, with the football player. What was it, a couple months ago, that was on Dallas, I think it was 635, or maybe it was a towaway. Anyway, they pulled the information. He was going 106 miles an hour. That comes from basically a flight box, kind of like an airplane, or a black box that records that information, in a car nowadays. So cars are different. So there's people that are specialized in just car forensics. So it's an amazing field. There's people that are specialized in just video surveillance in forensics, to look through video surveillance equipment, those kind of things. I'll pause there for a second, but these are the areas in general that we cover with my company today. Yep. Paul, I think you're muted if you were trying to say something.
I am muted. Of course, I start talking. How do you actually analyze a video? Because do you look at it from, is this real? Is this AI? And how do you go about doing that?
It's tricky. So analyzing videos themselves to determine if they're AI generated or if it's real is very challenging right now. It's incredibly challenging. You have to, when I look at videos, and there's software, my software does this, but I don't investigate. Let's say you say crimes against children, right? Crimes against children. You want to be able to look at those videos, look for things like I can tag, look for skin, look for weapons, look for hate speech within a video or a picture. And the system itself will parse thousands or hundreds of thousands of pictures, and then tag the ones that it believes have contained that information. Now, AI, particularly videos, are much more difficult to discern, but there's data associated with them that you can figure out if it was a low, I guess, technology capable type individual and they put out a nefarious video, for example, not on Facebook or anything like that. If you're truly doing an investigation, there's metadata called EXIF that's associated with that file that says, here's the camera it was taken with, here's the make, the model, the location, the geographic location, the specific data that might be associated with the time of day it was taken, those sort of things. That doesn't exist with AI generated images. Now, not that you can't add it, right? You can add that data, you can add EXIF data to a file. So it gets becoming very, very challenging, right? And there's a lot of very awful, evil, disgusting things going on with AI out there in the world right now that people are posting as real and are not real. So the whole industry is trying to catch up and try to figure out how to handle it. But for these for the kind of tools that I have, I can search and flag, and that's exactly how I do it. I lurk and search for, if I'm looking for something that would say weapons, if example, but I also look for files if they're missing that EXIF data, if they're missing data to when this photo was taken or when this video was taken, what kind of a camera, was it an iPhone? Because it's always part of it. If you do it with an iPhone, that information is always part of that video itself. It's just people don't know it. It's specialized data called metadata. It's called EXIF, and that's on the back side of that information that you can pull. And so you can skim real quick and say, does it have this data? And if it does not, then you can kind of say, okay, either the person A removed it, or B, it's not real. It's not a real photo. It's not a real video. It's a great question. Let's see. Specialized hardware. So my system itself is a very large machine. It was over $10,000, and I maintain about $20,000 a year in software licensing. Celebrite being a big one, that's been a big investment for me. That's exactly what the NSA, the FBI, and law enforcement have, these Celebrite labs. Now, I didn't buy the full. I'm restricted. You go through, so to get this software, just to buy it, you go through a vetting process, a background check. You can't be in certain countries. You can't. You gotta. They basically really check you out. It was about a 2-week vetting of me and my company before I was even permitted to buy the Celebrite software. And the reason for that, right? You don't want a dictator, or you don't want somebody that's running, Iran or Russia, that's cracking down on civil disobedience. You don't want those kind of folks having access to this kind of technology, or as little as possible, right? Because a lot of these, if you gave that to, say, a North Korea, for example, they wouldn't use it for solving crimes or solving incidents. They would use it to find out who's been civil disobedient, who's trying to speak out against the government, and they would use it for evil purposes. So with Celebrite in particular, there was quite a bit of vetting, 2 weeks that I went through, and some references and some other various things that I had to jump through to be even approved to buy that software. And I was even restricted from I can't, for example, I don't have the tools, or weren't permitted to have the tools that the FBI has, which is to completely unlock a completely locked phone. That's still restricted. I can get that done and request permission for a license for that, but I've got to have a warrant produced to Celebrite, and I've got to have basically approval from the device. And every device that I investigate with Celebrite, I have to have a documented letter of authorization from the individual, or from the courts, or from somebody saying I'm authorized to actually do the investigation. Because you think about your phone, right? Your life's on that phone. Everything you do, your social media, your Snapchat, your pictures, your secrets are all on that phone. And so you wouldn't want to have individuals that had nefarious things in mind or evil intent to be able to get access to that kind of data, because it is super secret data, all of it. And mostly what I investigate are corporate phones. I've done a few personal phones on occasion, looking for certain things, but most of this is corporate phones, and most of it is isolated to intellectual property theft. And like WhatsApp. A good example is, I'll give you an example right now. We uncovered a crime ring within a different company, that were all using WhatsApp to collaborate and organize a walkout to go to a competitor and gather up as much intellectual property and data as they possibly could, all over WhatsApp. And this was only discovered by me getting a hold of the corporate mobile phone. The individuals thought that since they were using WhatsApp, it was encrypted. Well, if I have the phone, right, I have the phone. It's not encrypted what I'm reading, so I can read your WhatsApp, I can read your Snapchat, I can read your whatever, I can read everything because I'm on the owner of the phone, right? My side's not encrypted. What's going through the network is encrypted, and that's something people need to remember. Is if you use WhatsApp, Snapchat, those kind of things on your phone device itself, all those secrets are exposed. They're not hidden. So if you get an investigation like myself, even if they're deleted on these phones, in a lot of cases, I can recover that information. So that was a specific crime ring at a different company that were using WhatsApp, thinking they were secure, organizing a walkout and intellectual property theft. That was a pretty significant deal for the business that we reported back in on. And we worked with apps like that. So I didn't really touch on that on the last screen. WhatsApp, Snapchat, Instagram, Facebook. You'd find it kind of a lot of the mobile devices I get have people's personal Facebook on them that are even though they're corporate phone. And what I always preach in this too is if you're working for a company that is like a financial or pharmaceutical or a highly a company that has a lot of secrets, the devices that are assigned to you, use those for work and work only, and use other devices, your other mobile device, for your personal. Don't ever cross the two ever, because you might be investigated. I did a small contract engagement with Chase, and I was sent a Mac and I was sent a mobile phone. I only used that, even though it was a pain in the butt, because I wasn't able to put my 1Password on. If you listened to me talk about before, my 1Password, all the apps that I like to use, I was confined to what was used by Chase. It was frustrating, but I knew, being a forensics investigator, that anything that I did that may even seem remotely impropriety, I signed documents stating that I was under NDA and I was under their rules, working with them, because I was in a very, very specialized, highly sensitive area. And so that would be my recommendation to everybody. If you're assigned a corporate phone or a corporate PC, do you need to be using that for business and business only? Because you might get it investigated by somebody like me, and it may not be information you want to get out. And I'll tell another quick story too. We had another company, a different company that sent me a computer. They said that this individual had, right before the day they left, had uploaded multi-gigabytes worth of data to a personal cloud storage. They couldn't tell what it was because it was encrypted in the middle. They wanted to know what it was, and they wanted to know if they should go after the employee for stealing a whole bunch of intellectual property. So I get the laptop. The information that they had transmitted had been deleted. I recovered that information, and lo and behold, unfortunately, it was this female's boudoir pictures that she had taken for her husband, and she'd put on her corporate laptop. I would imagine she would be horrified if she would have found out that her laptop was investigated and that information reviewed by investigators and by human resources, because her departure triggered a investigation because of the upload of all that data. So again, moral of the story, don't do that. Use your computer that's assigned from your company for computers for work stuff. Computers and phones aren't expensive. Use your computer for work stuff that's assigned to you by the company. Use your mobile phone that's assigned to the company for work stuff, because you might be investigated. And you certainly don't want me to find boudoir pictures of you and have to report that back into HR that, there's nothing here, but we should probably delete this case. So that was a real thing. So what information is needed? I try to make it simple. And this is also different about me. My billing and the way I bill out is very, very simple. But forensic examiners, bill in all sorts of different ways. You can imagine Ernst & Young, their SKU list of what they can do. But I keep it real simple. Device, employee start date, employee separation date. What's the narrative? Give me a narrative. What was going on? And away we go. That's what we need. Very simple. And to me, it's definitely always a treasure hunt, is the way I kind of put it. It is kind of like capture the flag or a kind of a gaming type environment where you're looking for the things that somebody tried to hide from you or they're trying to keep secret and report back. So a typical process is chain of custody documentation is very important. Physical, corporate laptop shipped to me. A lot of times, like I say, overseas, what I've wrote, and this is part of forensic investigation, the process to get a forensically sound image. It's always important to get that properly. There's certain methods to do it. I don't need the actual machine itself. I just need the image. We bring it in inventory. We date it. We put a serial number on it, or we record the serial numbers or unique markings, companies, asset tag information. We tag it with a case number, and then it goes into a safe here once I've finished the image. That's our process. Very, very tight. And what data is found? So you can imagine everything you can think of. So if you think that you've been sneaky and you've deleted your internet history, I don't care. I'll get it back. It's not, nothing's never deleted. I've recovered information where employees are sure that I've come across one anti-forensics type investigation that was incredibly difficult, where an employee had used a tool to take files and timestamp them into the future, so they'd be outside the range of the investigation window of when we were looking for data exfiltrated. And that was a pretty serious one, where there was actually nefarious, evil intent for this individual to not only remove a bunch of information from the company, but to purposefully go back and hide their tracks. I won't say he or her, hide their tracks. So that was challenging. I don't run across that very often, but there was anti-forensics techniques employed against that. But even then, there's certain techniques that we know, even if you do anti-forensics type techniques, that we will find it. If you're good at what you're doing, and most of us in this space that do this for a living are really good at it, we'll find it. What I typically do is search for the user's email. This is what anybody would do. So personal email. So if you're talking about intellectual property theft, and you're talking about criminals, looking to breach a company, one of the first things to look for is email. Well, why? Because that leads to personal email leads to links to their personal cloud storage, their personal use of a Snapchat, Facebook, Instagram, things that you might think that somebody wouldn't exfiltrate data with, like Facebook, like Instagram, which you absolutely can, are used. And finding all the personal email addresses that somebody uses on a corporate machine or the machine I'm investigating is very front and center. That is the first thing I find, is what all emails were used on this machine or on this phone, and that leads to all the other information. My second search is typically for USB drive activity. The most common way intellectual property theft happens is employee very simply comes in, puts a USB drive in the USB in the computer, drags and drops a bunch of data over to that USB, and then takes off. Now, I would tell you that my larger companies and Lawns as well, they prohibit the use of USB drives. And so that way of exfiltration of data is not possible. But the people that want to take data still persist. They use email, they use Facebook, they use Instagram, they use any other number of ways to get the data out. And then they delete their internet history, they delete the accounts, and think that they're safe. But once that device gets into the hands of an investigator like myself, that data is not gone. We'll get it back. And it's not a challenge. It's all the data that's found. Everything that you can imagine that just assume anything you've ever done on your phone, we'll find it. I don't care if you deleted it, and on your PC, we will find it. What's a report? So reports are important. So the biggest part of the job, not only technical, but it is being able to communicate these things to executives, right? Like I say, human resources, attorneys, law enforcement if necessary, people that aren't so technical. So you can't jump in there and start talking about, I imaged this, I booted that, I ran a VM on this, and blah blah blah, all this gobbledygook terminology that's part of this business. It's got to be in plain, simple English, And that's the skill in itself, because we all know IT folks out there, I know a lot of them, that can't relate to plain English to folks. They just can't. And attorneys are that way too. You know, you get in a conversation with a heavily, you know, attorney that's in that space, half the words they say, I don't even know what that word means. So I've been in that conversation before. So this is a big part of it, is executive over being able to communicate in a manner that is understandable by somebody non-technical. It's a huge deal, but it's always facts. In these reports, it's always facts. In forensics, you cannot do anything but do facts, and you have to stick to facts. There's no assumptions. There's no maybe. There's no I think. None of that goes on. This is facts that are presented in these reports and the executive overview and timeline. So what those two reports kind of look like are this. These are anonymized, but these are a couple of different investigations I just finished. So one of the big ones I do, if you take a look on the left, the timeline is very important, especially if you're looking at it from an HR perspective or legal perspective, because they're going to have a lot more information than I do. They don't share, these companies, I don't ask them to share a lot of information with me. I mean, literally what they typically share is the employee started this date, they left this date, and we think they took something. Go tell us what. And so example on this one on 9/30/2023, the employee emailed a copy of documents basically um, to their, you know, into their Dropbox that had a list of all company kind of secrets that they had access to. They, on 12/29, they did a Google search on company position that they wanted to leave to a new company on 12/29. So if you look at the times there, there's a couple of weeks in there. Employee, you can infer some things. And again, this is for HR to determine. But the facts are, you know, 1/8/24, employee turns in notice. 1/9, the employee got a welcome letter to their current company's corporate laptop on their personal email. So unwise, again, use your personal stuff on your company's applied equipment. On 1/19, the employee sent 6 emails with various company proprietary documents attached to their personal Gmail. On 21st, sent 13 email messages with company proprietary documents attached to Gmail. 22nd was the last day with old company. So obviously this person was in big trouble. Again, I don't know what happens. I provide the report. This is the way this works. I provide the report, provide the facts. That's handed off to HR and legal employment and legal whatever is, you know, whatever the company may have set up. And they go do the determination. I don't talk to this individual I'm investigated. I don't want to talk to this individual because that's not necessary. My job is the facts and to present the facts or lack thereof. You know, like the case in the boudoir thing, it was nothing, right? But it was something that I needed to report on and say, here's what the exfiltration of data was. Here's some of the pictures. We're not going to show all of them, but this is, I can promise you, this is all of them. And HR then closed that one. But this is a typical employee intellectual property theft process that I see time and time again, over and over and over. So if you're a small business and you think about this, you've got to key employees leave. It's not a very big investment to get me to take a look at this and look through it and see if something happened. But it's very common. Employees search for a new job. I look at all the searches. And forensic investigators will, you look for all the searches they did. They searched for a new company. They turned in their notice. They got an onboarding email. They then exfiltrate data 2 days, 3 days before the departure, and then their last day, and they leave. And all of a sudden, your data that your company's been built on, and you've worked so hard to you know, on building your business, your processes, your products, those things, all of a sudden show up at a different company. That's a big deal. I mean, intellectual property theft is a big deal. Corporate espionage, those kind of things, especially in the pharmaceutical world, the manufacturing world, any of these companies. It's a big deal. If somebody that's a vice president of sales or a VP of product development leaves, goes to a competitor, and takes all your secrets, it's a big deal. This was another one that we just finished up, a ransomware attack. And this is kind of the timeline from it that we kind of put together. We kind of put, and this is how this flows with these types of attacks. There's pre-attack information that's gathered of when the criminal activity geared up to try to test and try to get in, you know, failed login attempts, lots of failed login attempts. They actually breached the company on the 21st. On the 22nd, they dumped all the credentials out of this business. So all of the employees, emails, their login names and their passwords were dumped out to the criminals. They did, progress through the attack to set up to do exfiltration of data. And then on the 25th was an active attack where they exfiltrated data and then set up a software that runs automatically to lock up over 100 computers with ransomware. If you're not familiar with what ransomware is, basically it's encryption. And I did actually have somebody that, what encryption basically is, the best way to describe it in layman's terms is I own my property, I own my house, and all my goodies are in my house. I know where they all are. It would be as if somebody has locked my house down completely and I don't have the key anymore. And I'm not able to get into it. That data, that my house and my belongings are still there, they're intact, but I've got to pay somebody money to get the key back to my house. And that's the best way to describe what happens in a ransomware attack, is these criminals lock you out, encrypt all your data. It's not usable. You're not able to get to it. It's still there, but if you want to get it back, you've got to pay them a ransom and they'll give you the key to unlock that door. And that's the way that works. I recommend always don't ever pay the ransom. And I'm typically not privy to whether these companies do or don't. My recommendation is always no, because you're dealing now with a criminal element. You are trusting now a criminal element that is a criminal element to provide you the keys and go away and not do anything else. Well, guess what happens? You're now on the list of known payees. This information is passed around to the organized crime underground, and you are become a target over and over and over again, because this is work. And so the way these criminal, I don't want anybody here to think that the criminal activity that's going on is some fat kid in their mother's basement. That's not what goes on here. These are folks that have offices just like we have offices in the United States. They go in, they work 8 hours a day. They have people specialized in breaking into computers. They have people specialized in exfiltrating company credentials. They have other folks in that same office specialized in progressing the attack and hiding their tracks. Other folks specialized in identifying information and data and getting that out of the business. And then other specialties that are focused on just keeping, encrypting the business. So these are gangs of organized crimes that work in an office, just like you would think of an office here in the United States, but they're doing criminal activity. So these are not unsophisticated type attacks that you're dealing with anymore. These are very sophisticated, and unfortunately done in countries that maybe aren't so friendly with the West, that maybe the leadership in these countries doesn't discourage this type of activity against Western states. That's very common. And we see this particular attack came, 99% sure somewhere out of Eastern Europe area, Russia, Bulgaria, somewhere around in that area. So the likelihood of you paying the ransom and the criminal's going away and then the criminal's not really bothering you again is pretty low. So I would say, if this does happen to you, there's several steps to take quickly to protect your data. And this company did. You take those steps. Your critical information, say your accounting system or your payroll system, you disable any access from that being online, right? You take it offline completely. You disconnect any kind of other assets around, say, servers, computers, other things. Just disconnect them from the network, completely shut them off, because they'll be spreading the ransomware as well. So those are the very first steps in an emergency situation. You have to, unfortunately, the businesses and the processes and the software that you use to run your business and make a living at need to be shut down, and access to those removed from everybody until you can assess the situation and understand what's vulnerable and what's not vulnerable. And that's where you need to have somebody like me, where you can call somebody pretty quickly and get them in to understand, okay, what can be turned back on now? What did the criminals hit? What did they target? How did they get in? This information, enough information can be gathered quickly to understand, okay, well, you can get your payroll back up online, or here's how you do it. In the case of this ransomware, It had spread so far that the recommendation was, unfortunately, go to Best Buy, buy you a Linksys or some kind of just cheapy firewall there that just has an internet connection and a local LAN connection. Start imaging your employee computers and move them to this new network. It's completely separate from your current network. Just completely format them, wipe them out, and put them on this new network and get your employees back going. Luckily, in this case, none of the cloud assets, so their Salesforce wasn't hit. Their Office 365 wasn't hit. Their cloud infrastructure wasn't got to. It was all the local stuff that was compromised. So still, obviously, a really big deal, but the company was still able to operate, although in a much less efficient manner, or much less not normal day-to-day work. But they were still able to operate, and we were able to provide enough information quickly enough and identify, the source and the target and that sort of thing to say, okay, you can, with a new network now, go to Best Buy, get you this piece of equipment, set up that connection to your network, to your internet, and get your employees back in Salesforce so they can do their job, and you're not sending employees home. And that's step number one, really. So that's the kind of thing. That's the kind of thing we run through on a ransomware attack. But that's really, I mean, yeah, it's kind of a short one today. But that's kind of what we do in this space. It's become very technical because there's computers on everything, right? There's computers on your daggum fridge now. So you can do your graph shopping list on your phone, on your. So I would say those of you wanting to get into this space or have other folks that want to get into it, this particular space in IT is never going to go away, because you're going to have ISO. What's kind of geared down in the IT space, if you're looking into a career in this, is application development programming, right? That's geared down a little bit. And here's why: because AI, I'm able to give AI, and I use AI all the time in my business to ask questions because these things have gotten really complex. But I can ask AI to write this script for me, or write this code that takes this Excel spreadsheet, takes out, this column, merges this column, adds a date here, and then puts that out into a new Excel spreadsheet. That's an example of some things that I do with AI, and it writes me a little program that does it. I don't even have to write it. So programming in the IT space is kind of gearing down a little bit, just because AI is writing a lot of the coding. Pen testers and hackers, that used to be, penetration testing, those kind of things where, as an attacker, I try to see if I can get into your business. Those kind of roles are diminishing just a little bit, just because a lot of that's automated now through AI. So AI, several of the companies that I work with have an AI engine internal to their network that constantly attacks them all the time. And that's kind of funny to think about, but they're always attacking themselves to see what vulnerabilities they've got. But this particular space on forensics investigations, there's always going to be crime. There's always going to be employees that think they can get away with something. AI is not really able to determine that kind of information. It takes a human to decipher how maybe Facebook's attached to Gmail and then is attached to the corporate email that's attached to a picture of a file or a picture of a document folder that had a bunch of companies' proprietary secrets in it. AI can't do that, really. It takes a human and a timeline to put that together to make the story. So what we do, it's storytelling in this business, right? You're developing a story with timelines to convey truths, and AI is just not capable of doing that. And so this is going to be a big business. It's going to be a bigger business because ransomware is rampant. There's a lot of criminals out there around the world that are trying to steal from companies. AI is not going to be able to magically come in and say, I've fixed your ransomware, I've magically fixed it. No, it takes somebody skilled to understand, okay, here's what happened, here's how it happened. You need to take these measures specifically to keep this from happening again. And here's the business processes you can get online so you don't have, assets sitting and employees sitting and twiddling their thumbs You know, gets pretty expensive for a company. If they've got 100 employees that are sitting around and can't do any work because you're locked down, they need to get back to business as quick as possible. That gets incredibly expensive. And so AI is not going to be able to do this kind of work at all. And I don't ever see that happening, at least in the foreseeable future, because you're always going to have humans that test the limits of what they can get away with in crimes and intellectual property theft and ransomware stuff. And you're always going to need humans to interpret, you know, what they did. Now, when I say I use AI alongside of me, because a lot of the scripts and a lot of the things, the coding that's being written by these criminals to do these acts are incredibly complex. But AI can come in. I can say, hey, AI, and I actually named my AI Susan. I've got her, she's named, so her Susan. And I think I've said that before in one of these sessions, because it's got to be a female because she knows everything, and I'm very happy about that. That's not saying that's just the facts. So I've named her Susan very affectionately. And so rather than saying, hey, AI, I say, hey, Susan, can you tell me what this script was doing? And she lists out, bam, 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 bam. Okay. And that's how I started understanding. So AI is a good tool in this business, and there's an AI discussion coming up, I think, in a week or two, about a week, and we'll talk about that, talk about how I use it, but also talk about how AI can be used in your business, because it is a huge asset. But don't think for 1 minute that it's going to solve all your problems. In this space itself, in my space, it's a huge asset to what I do on a day-to-day basis. I lean on AI pretty hard because, as you can imagine, the criminal activity and the scripts and the ways that they get it, the way the criminals get in, is very, very bleeding edge, and it's a lot of unknowns. It's a lot of coding and stuff that I can't decipher it, but AI can. Susan can, and she tells me exactly. And I often tell her and say, tell me in non-technical layman's terms what this thing did exactly. And it, bam, 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 bam. So that's how I use it. But I guess that's it, Paula. It was just a little bit shorter one today. I'm happy to answer questions. Um, I mentor people, you know, happy to in this business.
Well, let's see, Benjamin mentioned that he is taking a practical Windows forensic course right now.
Perfect.
And he really liked your timelines
Good.
that you created.
Good. Good.
Uh,
Yeah. Please take those. Those are kind of what we've migrated to. And Benjamin, I'm always happy to give people guidance in this business, because we need more people. We need more good people. And
mhm.
that's, again, the biggest characteristics of it. You've got to be somebody that you can walk in and a business trusts you from the moment you open your mouth. And that's one of the biggest parts of this business is trust.
Well, he also mentions that he has experience in dark web forensics, which is, I don't know, just the name of
Awesome.
it kind of frightens me. So,
Yep. They're specialists in that area too. I'm not a specialist in that area. So I'm happy to talk to you, Benjamin, about that too, but that's not a specialization that I'm involved with. Just,
mhm.
you can only spread yourself so thin.
Well, you mentioned that you work a lot alongside HR for these companies, and I have a story. I was in HR. I was an HR specialist for a company in my previous life, and before cybersecurity was a thing, before we had digital forensics investigators and stuff. So, whenever there was a question about something that was found on a a laptop, you know, an employee's laptop, they sent it to HR. And we
Oh,
had to decide whether or not it was pornographic. Um, should this person be terminated? And I have seen some very interesting stuff.
yeah,
Very
that's,
interesting stuff. So
yeah,
I'm so glad that y'all exist now.
yeah, yeah. But the one thing really neat about my software that I love, I don't want to see those pictures either
Mm,
at all. I don't want it. My grandma used to say, once that image is in your head, you can never get it
you
out.
can't take it out. No.
So a piece of software that I use I don't have to look at images too often, honestly, with what I do. But one of the features of the software I use is to blur any images that it suspects have skin in them. So
Mhm.
it'll blur it. And so I don't get this barrage. And I can't imagine, the people that do crimes against children investigation and those kind of people, the police,
No.
God bless them. Thank God they're there. But the trauma that those folks have to go through because they have to look at these pictures. I don't know how that would be hard recovery in my mind. But those kind of forensics, I don't want to go into those kinds of forensics because I don't know if I could handle those kind of images in my head. But yeah, so the software is exactly right. So I've seen a lot of pornography on these things and seen a lot of things that I would prefer not to. Nothing that was criminal or anything like that. But if the nice thing is I've got and you wouldn't have had this software in HR, you wouldn't have had it, but my software will blur all the images that it flags as pornography, and it'll blur them so I don't have to look at them, which is
Wow. I
perfect.
wish that had existed then. That would have been nice.
Yep.
We used to have a policy that if someone was being terminated, then we had steps that we went through. We made sure that their access to any digital systems at all was always disabled before we let them leave the premises. And one day we were going through that process, and that individual tried to access one of her systems that she worked in and found that she had been disabled. So that kind of let that cat out of the bag,
Yeah.
But anyway, there are processes in place, and HR does get heavily involved with legal, with the departments, and with IT to make all of that happen. I can understand.
Yeah. I'll tell you a quick story on that since we got a little bit of time here. So that's a very big part of the processes that we go through with to do to top to bottom. A lot of companies don't do that. So employee, they let go, they forget to collect their badge, they forget to collect they don't remove all the passwords and everything. Here's another crime that's going on out there. Let's say that I'm an employee of AT&T and I've got on my LinkedIn, I leave. There's folks, if I'm in a key position, there's criminal elements that will go out there as I put my new LinkedIn job as a new company, they'll reach out to me and say, hey, I'll give you $5,000 if you'll give me your login name and password to your old company, and I'll give you more money if it actually works, and that sort of thing. And so if you're not of integrity, right, and you're angry at your previous employer, then that could be tempting for folks. But that goes on as well. The criminals browse LinkedIn, and so part of HR, when we talk about a program for the business on employee hiring and firing, you have to. Certainly, you don't want to implement the process in your case before the employee knows. So there's got to be timing.
Yeah.
So IT and HR have got to work together to say, okay, the employee's now walking into HR. Now we push the button that disables everything on the system.
Right.
So that's not that, because that's unfair to the employee to
It
try to
is.
log in and they can't log in. That's very unfair and hurtful to the employee. But you got to have those pieces in place. And if you don't, we all have stories, I'm sure, of people with their access badge still works and they're disgruntled and they come back and left you a present, in the business, or that was on one of my TV shows the other night. I'm watching Ted Lasso, and I guess on this one, the former employee of this one company came in and put a sheep in their conference room for the day. Because she still had her access badge. That was pretty funny. But yeah, you've got to be sure and have those pieces and processes in place. But a lot of this does fall in HR. A lot of what I do falls onto HR because you're dealing with employees. And again, that's why you've got to be a lot of integrity, and you got to be very mindful of presenting just the facts, because you are dealing with people's livelihoods. This HR person, once you present to them, they're going to make a decision on whether they fire this person or whether they let this person go. And your timeline and your supporting documentation can show that, was this intentional? Like, did this employee do this time and time again, send those multiple emails with files out? Or was this something where they did it once but that's not my decision. I present that information, but the HR people at that point pick it up and say, okay, internally, was this justification to fire the employee? Was this a one-time thing? Was it multiple time things? That's where that timeline is so important to them. But again, it's very, very important for the investigator to never make any kind of assumption determination. That's not that's the HR's role and legal's role with the evidence presented to make their determination through the employee interview and employee discussions. And they know the employee. I don't even know these people that I investigate.
Yeah.
I have no idea. I don't even know them. So there could be all kinds of extenuating circumstances. That's why, as that saying goes, you never know what's going on in somebody's life. So what I can do is present the facts. That's all I do.
Mm-hmm.
And it's up to them to determine, whatever happens. I never know. I mean, and I'm not supposed to know. I don't know really, what triggered the investigation beyond we think something happened. I don't know how the investigation closes, and that's appropriate. I'm not meant to know that. I don't need to know that.
Right.
All that.
Right.
So that's the way this works.
Right. Thank you so much, Andy, for sharing all of this. And like you mentioned, um,
I'll give you back the ball. You can give you back the
all
presentation.
right, there we go. There we go. Like you mentioned, next week is the AI one, the using AI. I personally really like using AI. It's a tool that has really it's a tool in our toolbox that really adds to us being effective as advisors, I believe, personal opinion. And then we have a bunch of webinars coming up over August. We have so many that I couldn't put all of them on one slide. So this is what we've got coming up through August 13th. You can access our website using that QR code up there, and that's where you can also access a link to register for any of these upcoming events. And while you're there, just take a look at our website. There's a lot of really good information on there. That's where you register for the webinars. You can get contact information. You can schedule an appointment with an advisor, and there's a bunch of different resources on there that you can use as valuable information. I would like to thank our benefactors, the people that keep us in business, the Small Business Administration, the state of Texas, North Texas SBDC Regional Office in Dallas, and our host institution, North Central Texas College. I want to thank you all for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks so much. Have a great day.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.